Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This week, we're going to be talking about change. Change in general. I don't even know, as I was trying to think of a title for this week, I'm like, I can't even get any more succinct than the word change, because that's, for me right now at least, and maybe you're feeling the same, that's the name of the game, change. And change almost feels like it means something different to me now than it used to. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to share some examples of some things I've been going through. And then at the end, I've got some suggestions that'll hopefully help you navigate change in your life right now. Before I get into the show, though, this week, I just want to remind you, my new course, The BS Method, How to Tell a Better Story in 5 Minutes or Less, is now available. You can visit thebsmethod.com to find out more. But really what this course is I developed it as a way to help people tell better stories. We all know the stories that we tell, knowingly or unknowingly, are what create our reality. And this course teaches you how to tell yourself a better story in 5 minutes or less. And yes, it can be done. So visit thebsmethod.com to learn more. All right, so let's talk about change. And I've been trying to work through this in my mind, like I said, with how things are right now. And this is unlike any other change that I've ever dealt with. Because, in the past, change meant something like, changing jobs, or maybe changing relationships, or maybe almost like changing things externally. Whereas I somewhat remained the same. And what I'm feeling like now with the change that I'm going through is I've changed internally, and the world has also changed externally. So I'm trying to reconcile the two, or I'm trying to navigate the two, or I'm trying to manage the two, when previously it's like only one or the other would change at any given time, right? Like maybe I had something internal change within me and then I got a new job, or the relationship changed or ended or whatever, which in turn changed me in some way, right? But right now, I guess the best way I can describe it is I feel like I'm changing internally, and I don't really know what that is. I haven't quite confirmed with myself what my inner changes are as I'm dealing with the changes in the world externally. So I had an experience last week where I had some family in town, and we went to a concert with one of my friends. And I've been to this particular place many, many, many times. And I've talked about it on the show, going to concerts. That's something I always did. That's what I love to do. But this was the first time I've been back to a concert in, a year and a half? The whole experience was odd. Like, the whole experience was just, it was like I couldn't quite get myself almost back into it, or I couldn't, I'm sitting there the whole time. I know I should be enjoying it because I'm loving, the music was good, and I'm sitting out there, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually at a concert again. But I couldn't help feeling like it was weird. Like I had a lot of anxiety. Like I was looking around, like, is somebody gonna try to start something with me for not wearing a mask, right? Even though nobody in the place was wearing them. But I had that fight or flight anxiety feeling, like, should I be watching what people are doing, right? I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't been around a group of people like this for so long. And then I'm worried about the car situation, because we actually got dropped off there, but I hadn't taken any sort of ride share in so long. I was like, what's that scenario going to be like? So I was worried about that. Should we leave at a particular time? And I'm watching my clock, my watch. Should I be planning to make an escape pretty quickly, right? The whole thing was almost about escape and anxiety were the top-notch feelings I had, so much so that I couldn't feel joy to be in the situation. Like, I couldn't feel joy sitting there watching the concert. And I remember sitting there in the concert thinking I should feel joyful that I'm back out doing this, right? But I did not feel joyful at all. I felt more anxious and like I needed to plan my escape. And I know just isn't me, right? I know everybody's going through this. I know you've probably had a similar situation getting back into things that you've experienced. And this whole, I did a show on that called The Reentry, like getting back into things. And it was like, I think everybody I talked to at least, it seemed like we were all just going to go back out and be like, oh, yay, everything, we're back. Great. Like everything's back to normal. But that's not how this is happening. Like, we feel like we should be like more excited or more like thrilled to be back out or more, almost like we should pick back up where we were before, just step right back into it. And maybe some people are able to do that, but I am not. That is not my experience. That's not how this is working for me. And this stepping back into things, like, the situations are different and I'm different. And I'm not sure how to do that. Like, I'm not sure how to do things anymore yet. And so what I'm, realizing through this is a process. This isn't just a walk back in like everything, like nothing happened, right? We had a very traumatic year for a year and a half almost. And it's, at least for me, I just can't walk back in as if nothing happened. So being able to figure my own self out in this change, and how does this change really mean? Like, how do I experience the world now, right? How do I want this to be? Like, what do I want my life, like, what's important to me to carry into things going forward? And so this concert was a great example of how I could really feel the difference in the change in myself and in the way everything was, as I move forward. And even being around strangers, like a group of strangers where everybody's just sitting there. And this was more of like a listening concert, right? It wasn't like a wild, like everybody standing up, dancing crazy. It was nothing like that. It was just a sitting concert and listening. And being around strangers was weird. It was weird to be around people again and not feel like I need to flee or try to escape. Even though that was what was coming up, like I logically knew I didn't need to feel that way, but those feelings were still there. And then we actually went out after this concert for a while. And, it was, as I got into it a little more, I guess it got a little better, but it was still it felt surreal. Like I'm walking around feeling like I'm in a dream or something, or almost like, did the previous year even happen? Did I imagine it or something? Because I'm looking and everything looks like it's normal, but it doesn't feel normal. Everything has changed so much and I've changed that it doesn't feel normal. And that was weird. The whole night was weird. It felt weird. It felt weird the next day when I was thinking back about it. And I was like, okay, so this is a lot more difficult getting back into things than I expected. And, I've had more experiences like that as I've went forward this week, and talking to people, seeing people, like reconnecting with people. It's been really weird, and there's just so much change, and that's the only, it's such a generic word, it feels like, but it's the only way I can describe it, is epic levels of change, both internally and externally, that make me really unsure of how to proceed in the world. And so I wanted to talk about that this week because I'm sure you're going through your own version of this. It may not look just like mine, but I'm sure you're going through some version of this too. And I want you to know you're not alone, right? We're not alone in this. Like, everybody is experiencing some level of this. And I think if you went through this alone, if you lived alone and went through this whole last year alone, it's especially difficult. And it's not something that people talk about. People aren't really talking about that. Like, I hear people say, talk about their experience, but I'm like, yeah, but you're married. You live with somebody. You didn't go through this alone. At least you had somebody else. And I feel like going through all of this alone, being alone and learning how to be alone, adjusting to be alone, now trying to change that and talk myself into, okay, you don't have to be alone anymore. You can go out and join the world. That bridge or that like shift into doing that isn't as, like, it's not as easy as I thought it would be. Like, I thought I would be so excited to not have to be alone, or, you know, but there was, I don't know. I guess I got used to it. And that's also weird that, you know, that we could get that condition to where we're okay, not okay, but we can function being alone. Because I know over the past year, what I found myself doing was, you know, I had a set 4 to 5 things I made sure that I did every day. It kept me in a routine. You know, it kept me from being consumed by the aloneness, right? In the despair that, you know, we all experienced. And what I'm finding is those 4 or 5 things that I did routinely are like, almost like a security blanket now. Like, I have to continue to do those things to feel safe, or to feel like I'm okay. And I don't think that that's probably normal to behave that way, but that's where I'm at right now. Like, that's where I am. Like, I have to still continue to do those things. Like some of those things were like, so walking my dog every day, right? Which is not a big deal, but, working out at home. Like, there was a specific workout that I like to do at home. There was, you know, I wanted to have my house picked up and cleaned, and like, you know, there was things like that I made sure that I did every day as part of my routine. And those things became safety nets for me, or safety blankets. And now that I can get out and I can go work out anywhere, but I still choose to do it at home, right? I can take my dog to the park or take him wherever, but I still choose to walk him around my house, because those were safe and secure for me when nothing else felt safe and secure. And so the change that I feel like I'm dealing with, and you may not be exactly like this, but it may be some version of it, where I'm trying to reconcile within myself, okay, what do I do now? How do I do this now? You know, how do I let go of some of these things or do I let go of some of these things? I don't know. I think these are still questions that I'm working through. Like, do I let go of some of these things that were so critical for me emotionally and mentally during the last year and a half, or do I continue those things? And I incorporate that as part of who I am now, and part of the change that I experienced. And I don't know the answer. I think this is going to take some time. I don't know how long, but some time to reconcile through all this, like work through it and be able to feel like it's safe enough to do something different in all of the change. And I struggled with this conversation too, because I don't have a real good answer for this week. Usually when I talk on here, these shows help me work through what I'm working through. Like, they help me process what I've experienced, or what I'm struggling with, or what I found to be beneficial. And on this week, I don't know that I necessarily have like an excellent, like groundbreaking suggestion for you to take from the show. But what I do know is, when we talk about change, when we think of change, and whatever comes up for you when you think about the word change, is that nothing ever stays the same. Like, things are always changing. Things are always in flight, right? We're never stuck in a particular space or experience for the rest of our lives. And I know over the past year and a half, at least for me, that's how it felt. It felt like we were stuck and things were never going to change. But they're changing, right? Things are different. We're able to go do things. Things aren't like they were for the past year and a half. So I think it's good to remind ourselves of that things are always changing. And so right now, today, I feel this way, right? I feel like I don't know how to manage myself in the change and in the world. But I can also remind myself that I won't always feel this way, right? I'm going to continue to have more experiences, and hopefully over time, some of this fear or anxiety or whatever will wear off a little bit, and it'll become more natural, right? I'll be able to feel joy again. I'll be able to feel okay around crowds and strangers and stuff. And I think reminding myself of that, and if you're going through something like like this, if you're experiencing something in another way, reminding ourselves that things will change. We're not stuck. And part of this, I think, takes a resetting of our expectations, right? Because I think that was something else that was maybe a problem for me, is I thought I could just go back into the world, like I'd be fine and everything would be fine. And it's not for me. It doesn't feel fine. It feels weird. It feels like I have to, talk myself into doing things, or I have to, like, some days I just can't do things, right? And so it's almost like a resetting of our expectations, because we didn't really know what to expect when we set expectations, maybe a year and a half ago. And now we've had these experiences, and now we're maybe stuck in these old expectations previously, where we were expecting it to be a certain way, or we thought we would be a certain way, and then we're realizing that's not the case. And so I think resetting our expectations helps take the pressure off of us, helps take the pressure off the situation, or if you're around other people, like group situations, right? Just having maybe less of an expectation, or allowing yourself just to go through whatever it is that you're feeling, and know that doesn't mean that that's how you're always going to feel when you're in those scenarios, or when you're having those experiences. That everything is subject to change. And change used to bring a lot of anxiety in itself, because for me, because I sometimes didn't want change, or I liked how it was and I was afraid of change. But right now I feel like I'm welcoming change. Like, I'm ready for more change. I'm ready for more change within myself. I'm ready for more change when I go out into the world. And so change doesn't feel I'm not as fearful of change as I used to be. I'm actually looking forward to change, because I feel like I know I can feel better, or I know it can be better. And I'm actually excited for that. I may not be there today, but the possibility is there, right? We're not stuck. We're not in this. It's not how this is always going to be. So I think remembering that things will change. We're not stuck. Everything is subject to change, and change is okay. But then also, this is a really good opportunity to decide or think about, what do we want that change to look like, right? Like, what do we want? I talked about last week about the loss exercise, where you have like a quadrant, and just a 4-square quadrant, where the first quadrant is things you'll never get back. You start, you write out those things when you think of change or loss. The second quadrant is things you have to get back, like things that you really want, you require to, as part of your life. The third quadrant is what you would like to have back. So maybe it's not you don't have to have it, but it's a nice to have. And then the fourth quadrant is things you're glad are gone. I think that applies again this week, thinking through that, because if we start to think about those things, about what do I have to have? If I look back on a year and a half ago, what things do I want to bring forward in this change? Like, now is a great time to reset all of like I said, I feel like I'm resetting myself. Like, I don't know these things that I used to think made up myself. For the concerts, for example, right? I would have told you before that's who I was. I was a person that goes to concerts, right? And now I went to a concert again, and I do not feel like a person that goes to concerts. In fact, I felt like a foreign alien in there. Like, I didn't even know, like, have I ever done this before? So it's very disorienting, and it's very upsetting, and it's these simple things that are now require so much effort and thought. And so change gives us this, and I think especially now we're at this point where we have this opportunity to decide what we want it to look like going forward. Like, what do we want to bring forward? Like, I don't have all the answers with this for me, but one of the things that I have decided on how I want it to be going forward for me is, like, when I think about my health, like, I want to eat good food. Like, I want to eat good, nutritious food, right? So I've made some changes there. I'm starting to buy different things and cook things differently, and just do things a little differently there. And that's something that's really important to me. That's something that I was probably half-assed with before in prior to 2020. I would have probably given myself like a C- to a D in that area, because I wasn't really paying attention. I was running 90 miles an hour. I was always in a hurry. And none of that was bad. That was what I knew at the time. And I'm not beating myself up over that or upset about that or anything like that. That's where I was. But this reset over the past year and a half has given me, I've thought about that a lot, and I've decided I wanted to make some change there. So that's one way I'm incorporating change. Now, there's all the other areas of my life. I have no fucking clue what I'm going to do in those areas or what I honestly want, but that's something I'm going to be working through going forward. So change is an interesting thing. It's, I don't know. It's hard to explain because for me it feels very emotional. Like I can't hardly put words to it, but I think change can be looked at now. We've experienced so much change, so we know we can live through it, right? But change now can, I think, almost be looked at as a positive because things get to change. Things will change. We'll never be stuck. We're not going to be stuck as much as it might feel like it. We're not stuck. Things will move. Things will go forward. And now is a good time to maybe look at what that looks like for you and how you want change to be for you as you move forward. So those are some thoughts this week on change. If you have any feedback on this, or if you're experiencing change and you'd like to talk about it, I would love to bring you on the show and do a little interview and we could talk through it. I'm really interested in other people's experiences on this. So if you're interested, you can email me, sloanfremont@pm.me. You can go to my website, sloanfremont.com. My social media is listed in the bottom of the show notes here. You can connect with me there. And remember, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, my course, The BS Method, is now live. So you can visit thebsmethod.com to learn how to tell a better story. All right, so that's it for this week. I will see you here next week. And remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth.